Yes, hi everyone. So we are moving to session 4, People, Art, and Engagement. During this session, we have 4 presentations. 2 are of a long papers, and 2 of short papers. We're going to have presentations from Beth Altringer, Narges Mahyar, Francesca Samsel, and Jessica Kendall-Bar. So let's start with Beth.
Hopefully that's working for everybody. So I'm going to walk you through the story of a project that we did with our students at Brown University, RISD, which is, for those who don't know, the Rhode Island School of Art and a very well-known arts institution, and Harvard University's Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. And I'll focus this presentation mostly on the process that we used to develop this partnership and this student collaboration. So we created a multi-institutional collaboration to expand public participation with scientific issues, to create maximally engaging visualizations to bring local city data to life. And I'll talk a little bit more later about maximally engaging and what we mean by that, and to develop a coordinated course and research sprint across these institutions. We built upon expertise from a number of partners that you can see here, and then created an iterative exhibit of the student projects at Boston's Museum of Science, which is really cool. If you haven't been there, you should go. It's a great institution. And our paper listed here shares more about our process and lessons for others who want to do something like this. So I want to take a moment to just showcase our collaborators here. And I think pictures always tell the story a little bit better. So we can see these are students showing their work at the museum, and you can see it's quite a lively atmosphere. And so there were 5 different projects. One was about transportation and commuting options, and a game that people could play to understand the impacts of those. Another was an interactive sea level exploration of Boston's past, present, and future. And another explored and allowed people to suggest future historical and cultural landmarks, again, trying to get them engaged in how their city changes over time and giving them a sense of agency with that. Another was telling the story of the city through its trees. And finally, one about access and functionality of gathering spaces and how they relate to other spatial choices in the city. And this, I really want to emphasize how none of this would have been possible without the collaborative institutional framework, and that was a lot of work. So when we look at the lessons for others who want to do this, like at least the same amount of work that went into educational programming went into institutional partnership development. And each partner brought something different. So the Museum of Science provided a high trust public education access point where people are already coming to be inspired and to learn. And they brought their expertise in science communication. And one of the things we kept coming back to in the challenge of engaging the public is the 7-second rule. So apparently people only spend 7 seconds with an exhibit, and your challenge is to engage them so much in those 7 seconds that you earn, additional attention from them to get to a deeper and deeper message. The city of Boston provided access to their open data portal, as well as access to internal experts who worked on each of those data sets so that we could get a sense of the strengths and challenges and biases in those repositories. The MADE program, which I run, contributed both an entire studio course to this effort, as well as our students to continue on beyond the studio course. And then the Berkman Klein Center at Harvard added expertise in ethical data and technology use, and more students from diverse fields across the school. And on the right side of this slide, the only thing that I would really emphasize is the commitment at both leadership and implementation levels was critical to the success of this program. So our educational program structure looked like this. So the project planning phase took probably the better part of an entire semester. the leadership team. And then phase one was inside a course that was focused on data communication, exploring the different data sets and visualization strategies, learning from curators and museum experts and other people who design for maximum public engagement, such as people who work in public broadcasting, for example. And then phase two had more expert input, and students started developing their visualizations and iterating on those. And then finally, for the exhibit itself, we had two exhibits. And so we did the first one, which we called a soft launch, and learned from the experience of engaging with the public. And that was surprising to see the students' growth. You know, they knew that 7-second rule is real, but to experience it was very different, to see children try to understand what they were trying to communicate and really being exposed to the diversity of the public in interacting with their ideas. They improved a lot from the first exhibit to the second exhibit. And so some of the lessons learned from this is, there are many more in the paper, but I'll just emphasize that the public trust of museums is an interesting place to be developing these projects for and showcasing them. Public trust is declining in a lot of other areas of expertise, and I think there's an opportunity to work with museums in this way in particular. And getting outside of our institutional bubbles, our students anyway don't get a lot of feedback on their projects outside of other students in their institution or professors in their institution, which is not a very large sample. The second one is this high bar for engagement. 7 seconds is really ruthless, but I think worth learning about if we really are committed to getting to helping people understand these messages at a deeper level, and to be able to scaffold kind of 7 seconds, and what if you get 7 seconds more, and what if you get 7 seconds more, like what message are you trying to communicate in each of those kind of attention packages, if you will. And related to that, the importance of iterative design. So this coming year, we want to do another one that actually has a bit of a different theme, but we will add another iterative cycle because that was so valuable here. And then the last point is how valuable it was for our students to design within the messiness of local systems. So they had to work with, real world data, very complicated stories behind that data, and having access to people who worked on that data was really critical, because there are things that you couldn't see in the data itself. And having access and connections to diverse experts and seeing alternative career pathways was really valuable to our students, and actually influenced some of their choices after graduation. So I'll leave my contact information here. Thank you so much for listening. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beth. Excellent presentation. Narges, you're next.
Do you see it? Perfect. So I am Narges Mahyar, and I'm very excited to be with you all today. Thank you for organizing such a timely and important workshop. And I'm happy to talk about harnessing visualization for climate action and sustainable future. In this paper, I propose 5 considerations for enhancing community engagement and collective action regarding to climate change. And these are grounded both in prior work as well as my past 10 years of work designing visualization for community engagement. Due to lack of time, I will focus on presenting a few of them. So first, I bring the importance of inclusive and accessible visualization for enhancing climate education. And by inclusive and accessible visualization, I mean those visualization representation of data that are designed to be easily understood and navigated by a diverse audience, including those coming from marginalized group. And I'll talk about examples of simple and understandable visualization like infographics and pictographs that we use in our project for public engagement and showed massive success in terms of engaging diverse audience, which triggered our curiosity in examining this impact of pictograph in a more scientific experiments. So we ran a series of experiments, and the result was pictographs not only do not hinder understanding of visualization, but also enhance the basically relevance to the topic. And then the next point is about interactive visualization for fostering agency and deepening engagement with climate change so people can explore the data themselves, understand its implication, and engage more deeply with climate change data. For instance, in this project, we built UDQuiz Spaces, which is a multi-display tabletop-centered project for environment for engaging the public in the very complex matter of sustainable urban design. And the simple and natural interaction with the tabletop, everything being touch input, and all of the real-time visualization fostered collaboration and co-creation among stakeholders and enable a wide range of public to be engaged with this tabletop-centered tools. Next, I'll talk about how in situ visualizations are important for bringing the matters to the public in a more relevant way and basically reducing spatial indirection. For example, in Rising Emotions, we combine data physicalization and art installation to show the public feelings about the sea level rise in East Boston. By embedding the flood level, basically projected flood level in future in this art installation, we made the threat of rising sea levels more tangible, fostering greater awareness and engagement within the local community. And I also talk about the importance of shared immersive experiences for catalyzing collective action. This is another example from our project where we had a communal extended reality bus tour where we took the resident of Roosevelt Island in this bus tours to show them the impact of climate change on their own very neighborhood. And this kind of shared immersive experience transformed abstract climate data into something real, sparking creative solution and collective action. And with that, I'm going to thank you for listening to my talk, and let's turn data into a force for climate action together.
Thank you, Narges. Great presentation. Next is Francesca's presentation. Ben, you're going to run the video.
Artists, data, and climate change. Distilled messages, multiple entry points, and layered metaphor. I'm here to talk about scalable climate communication, about finding a means of reaching large audiences within their course of their everyday lives, able to bypass our human defensive responses to threats too large to contemplate. Art is a language societies have used throughout time to enable entry into fundamental threats to life. Artists around the globe have turned their attention to employing artistic language to create multiple entry points into the reality of our changing planet, a topic whose consequences overwhelm our human ability to absorb and contemplate. Artists look for a distilled analogy that will prompt internal thought without triggering the overwhelm. Artists present pathways that lead the audience into internal discussions and thus construction of their own conclusions. Here we present climate-focused artists whose work reaches hundreds of thousands of viewers. Our question is, what are the common properties that have enabled these artists to speak to wide audiences around the world? We distilled the common threads down to 5 principles. Constrained by time, rather than explaining, I'm going to demonstrate via the work of Andrea Poli and B.D. Wolf. Andrea Poli's Particle Falls distills the impacts of human activity on the environment. It is an installation that uses particle monitors and large-scale projectors to reveal changes in the levels of particulate matter in the air at its location in real time. The project references a waterfall that changes in velocity and characteristic based on the amount and type of particulate matter in the air at that moment. When a plane flies overhead, one can see the increases in particulate matter generated by the plane. The same is true when a bus passes by. This demonstration negates the need to try and explain or convince anyone of human activity's impact on air quality. B.D. Wolf started as a musician, but turned to creating multimodal experiences. Her work, Red to Green, was a response to Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth so many years ago. She put it on a shelf, thinking that society would surely rise to the occasion. The core is a basic analogy on how the Earth is turning from green and verdant to hot and dangerous. However, B.D. was keenly aware that space, metaphorically and physically, needed to be built to provide audiences with context and time to absorb and contemplate. B.D. identifies 3 elements needed to create meaningful experiences that speak to our humanity and can be absorbed into our consciousness: multimodal ceremony, immersion or interaction, and story. She has gone on to build several very diverse exhibits built on these principles that are attracting worldwide audiences. I will leave you with our analysis and links to the sites of these artists discussed in the paper.
Played all our cards, but none left for you. Forgive us, my dear, can't you see? It's the truth that we don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know.
Great. Thank you so much, Francesca and Ben, for running the video on behalf of Francesca. And now we have our last presentation from Jessica Kendall-Bar.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Kendall-Bar, and I'm a postdoc at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. I'm excited to share some of the projects that our team has been working on over the past 2 years. And I'm glad that folks from NASA's Scientific Visualization Studio are here with us today. This is some data from them that I used as a backdrop for some of the visualizations of Argo floats, oceanographic data. And I think that this ties in well to what I think is a common interest with everyone here today, which is how we can leverage some of the common systems and data structures that each person has been developing independently to improve all of our visualizations across projects. So EcoViz is this collaborative initiative to co-design multimodal environmental data visualizations. These visualizations are combining web browsers and game engines to show the benefit of informed management and nature-based solutions. Our 3 use cases show the flood protection benefits of coral reefs and mangroves, underwater behavior in marine animals, and simulations of controlled burns. Our working group met weekly for 2 years to share our successes as well as our frustrations, to code together and to provide feedback on the infrastructure and the design of each of these projects. And the projects that we're working on combine scientific, cinematic, and information visualization. So first, the project that I led is called Life in the Deep, where we're using visualization to better understand the impacts of climate change on marine life. And it's all built off of tools that I built for my dissertation to visualize the sleep patterns of northern elephant seals. So for that project, I used After Effects and Autodesk Maya. And since then, I've translated those tools to a lot of other study systems and species. So now those are allowing us to listen to the 2 beat per minute heart rate of a blue whale, to visualize foraging efficiency of whales that create bubble nets to feed. And it's also allowing us to visualize collective behavior for whole populations or groups of animals behaving together to interact with their environment. And those visualization tools can also be used to show the impact of a human-caused disturbance, like the sound of a ship. And these visualizations have been presented to some decision-making bodies at both the national and international levels. We've also done animations using After Effects to communicate indigenous knowledge and place-based knowledge about abalones and otters in Alaska. And this visualization on the Argo data that I showed earlier has been presented at COP at a climate change conference. But looking to the future, I can't be making all of these visualizations myself in After Effects. So this project and this initiative are really about how do we scale that? How do we get data more quickly into web browsers, into game engines, so that people can generate these types of visualizations on their own without losing some of the power of a narrated animation or story. So for 5 years now, I've been working with the Coastal Resilience Lab at UC Santa Cruz to advance solutions and our understanding of risk with rigorous hydrodynamic and so you can listen to the sound later if you want. And so that work is focused on visualizing the flood protection benefits of coral reefs and mangroves. And those ecosystems not only support marine biodiversity, but they also provide really critical flood protection for coastal communities. So these visualizations that were put together by Ian, who's joining us today, take 2D outputs from Sphinx and XBeach and layer those with OpenStreetMaps data and bring those into web browsers like web browsers and Unreal Engine. We can use those scenes to then communicate with community members, such as this ambassador from Belize, or to decision makers at the federal level like FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers. And then we've also been using immersive tools and web browsers to visualize wildfire resilience. So as a postdoc, I've started to work with Wi-Fire, which is this group at UC San Diego that's led by Iklay Altintas to improve wildfire resilience through physics-based simulations of controlled burns. And the visualizations that team has been working on show how controlled fires can reduce vegetation buildup and then mitigate the risk of megafires. So for that project, we're displaying physics-based fire simulations generated using fast fuels and quick fire models, and combining those with LiDAR scans that are actually taken on the forest floor so that fire practitioners can actually visit the forest that they would otherwise have to drive to and get a sense of the vegetation, the thickness of the trees, and the overall risk for wildfire in that area. And those tools have been demonstrated to land management agencies, including the USDA Forest Service, as well as several cultural burning organizations. And they were recently featured in this hands-on demo for the House and Senate AI caucuses on Capitol Hill. So some lessons learned from our work together. Audience is very important to consider when you're talking about domain experts versus policymakers. Policymakers generally favored a really clear narrative and a clear takeaway, while the domain experts and fire practitioners wanted to get into VR and look underneath tree trunks and around tree trunks and really get into the nitty-gritty. And then reproducibility was super challenging for us, even with using version control tools like Perforce and GitHub. The reproducibility of some of these bespoke pipelines poses a lot of challenges when you're talking about sharing massive Unreal projects or massive tech stacks that are hard to translate from one project to another. More than ever, it's really important that we communicate at least what data structures we are using. And ideally, we start to use some of the same data structures so that we can just bring people's data into our shared visualization playground. And I think that that's been a huge benefit of having a working group like this, where we can sort of translate lessons from each other. Flexibility is really important. We ended up switching the tools that we use several times. So I think just not marrying yourself to a specific tool and instead just prioritizing the data and the narrative that you're bringing forth. And then videos even though immersive tools can be really exciting, never underestimate the power of a video that can be shown really widely in PowerPoints to key decision makers and stakeholders. And then also, I always tell the engineers that I work with that I'm always pulling up stuff on my phone to show people. So having something that's available quickly through the web browser is also really important for demonstrations. So you can visit our EcoViz website to see some of these examples. Something that's cool is that this website is powered using a Notion database that is dumb enough that even I can understand how to put in new entries and modify the descriptions of each of the videos. So that's something for you to check out. And feel free to reach out if you're interested or want to get involved. We're always happy to have more people involved.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jessica, for your presentation. Everyone, this concludes the 4 presentations for this session, for this topic. Please feel free to either raise your hand or post questions on the chat or Slido. I'm not sure. Let me check if there are any hands up right now for questions. Maybe till more questions come, I can jump in. So from seeing all the presentations here, all the projects, all the efforts, this is a collection of, let's say, projects that are interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and also have another key component, which is collaboration. These words, these keywords are often used, I would say lightly, but these are very challenging efforts, right? And even, let's say, the projects within that are visualization driven, I would say that a draw from either InfoViz or cinematic viz, or even many different types of data visualization. So there is a lot of research in these fields, but on my end as a practitioner also, and sometimes, you know, we have to work as a practitioner, have to move forward with some instincts, right? Especially when I am I'm going to traverse a field that I have not traversed before, or there is no research there. I would like to ask you if there were any unexpected findings or outliers from your projects, something that you didn't expect that either turned positive or negative.
So, as a visual artist, I was very surprised to find 2 things. One, the music is critical for the I mean, I know that sounds weird, especially to this crew, but so B.D. Wolf worked with Oliver Sacks, and Oliver Sacks talks about music and gardening as being like the roots into our soul, and one of the concepts that we work on is that you have to speak to someone intellectually as well as emotionally, or else it is not absorbed. That's research that's been around a long time. So I was surprised to see and understand the impacts of music when it's incorporated into presentations. And then the other piece that I wanted to mention was the 7-second rule. It's huge, and I've done a lot of museum exhibits and that kind of thing. But so when we looked at a whole kind of rubric of artists and whatnot, and that's how we distilled to those principles. The interaction and the connection to the now. So as soon as we gave someone a puzzle to solve, the 7-second rule ran out the window. And so I think that this is an important piece to understand, is that involving audiences in the exploration and putting them in the scientist's shoes as in the exploration, as opposed to just communicating fact, is a key means of moving beyond the 7-second rule.
Yeah, I think I would add to that. So I don't mean to imply that the 7-second rule is the end, but even to get them involved in a puzzle, those are your first 7 seconds, right? To get them excited about the puzzle. And then you can have more and more time with them.
Yeah. I worked with a team from the Smithsonian, Smithsonian for like 20 years. And we did a lot of testing, and we had exhibits where people were standing for 5 and 6 minutes, and she was like stunned. So having a museum professional that understands how to move through those stages was critical.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Thank you all. I think unless someone else from the presenters wants to jump in, we have questions. Amia has a question, and then Rachel.
Yeah, I had a question, but I think Francesca and Beth just addressed it in the discussion right now, so I'm good. I just wanted to know what it entails to um, catch the viewer's attention beyond the 7-second rule, and how much information can you convey in that 7 seconds. So first, you have to catch the attention of the viewer, so that you can do it through probably touching the sentiments of the viewer, probably getting them hooked into the idea, and then maybe delivering the facts so that they can actually process those facts and understand the picture. So I guess that was good insight from both of you. So thank you so much for that.
I would really suggest consulting kind of professional literature and professionals, because it's like that, but they do know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I would just add to that user testing. So I think what's so hard, and our students went through this, is they want to communicate everything. And we can tell ourselves a story that by putting it out there, that's somehow the equivalent to that information being digested.
Yeah.
But actually researching how much is getting digested with each iteration is really valuable, and researching that with people who are, not also on the project, of course.
Yeah, I think I would add to that that's my experience too, that scientists, understandably, they want to get everything out there. But one of the things that I went to art school, one of the things that we're trained to do is a distillation, and that's key. What is the one fact that is going to bypass our assumptions, is going to grab our curiosity, and is going to want us to learn more? For instance, there's a Vanessa Benza's piece is about plankton, and she opens with 1 out of every 4 breaths we take is generated by plankton. And so that's the notion, is distilling. You don't need to tell it. What is the message, and how do you grab someone quickly?
And I'll also add that I teach a data-driven animation course where we give the students only 2 minutes to tell their story. And they always make it longer than 2 minutes, but at least it's usually not longer than 3 minutes. And we have them pick music really carefully and develop a hook for the first 7 seconds. And somebody mentioned Pixar. We use some of Pixar's tricks of pairing the extraordinary with ordinary, like, the concept of The Incredibles, or, opening with what if there was a world where, and just like tapping into awe and imagination about how we could build a better future.
Thank you all. Amy, you want to jump
You're
in?
muted, Amy.
Thank you. Amy Allen, I'm the one at Pixar. I'm new to the data viz world, but I was wondering, especially with engagement, and Jessica, you touched a little bit on it with the policy makers, but what do you find has been the most effective to engage policymakers in making decisions, especially when, especially in the political world, they may be thinking more about the day-to-day cost of people's living and everything like that?
So I can start. I think that when scientists talk about engagement and community engagement, we're typically talking about public and community events and how we engage the public in that way. But if we're talking about stakeholder and decision maker engagement, I think that the techniques are different, but there are some shared values between public and decision makers. So one example is that so I work with this PI at UC Santa Cruz, Mike Beck, who spends a lot of his time in conversations with FEMA and with the Army Corps, who are looking at these numerical calculations of benefit versus cost. And they're looking for a good financial scenario, but what's going to be most effective and easiest to convince their constituents and their fellow policymakers of is something that also looks good and feels hopeful. So Ian has been developing these photorealistic scenes where we can actually see a hybrid coral reef scenario and have somebody feel better about that solution compared to just the seawall that's a concrete structure. And so I think there's some overlap there where we can tap into our underlying humanity and help reach people even next to a benefit cost analysis that's showing that it's in the green. We can show that the solution is also green.
I would just add that there are two kinds of policy levels. That's decision makers, and they need like facts. And then there's the next level, like if you're sending something to Congress or to be passed around in Congress, and so they need something really short. But the thing that I've found is how little just basic knowledge about climate change is. It's really astounding. And so again, it goes to the point of rather than trying to show them specific exact details, just some basic underlying facts that can be communicated clearly and easily and understand the overall is what we found.
Thank you all. I know we're running a little bit over time, but let's maybe take one more question. I know Rachel had raised your hand, and we can take the rest in the open discussion. If Narges and Fanny, that's okay with you? Okay, Rachel, go ahead.
I just want to add to what Jessica said earlier. We also have found that the end of our narratives we sort of dial back the sea level rise and the wildfire and that, and we have that sort of hopeful ending as well, because we think that's also really important to leave people with that sense of agency, opportunity, so it is, I'm going to add to that. My question was for Beth, and it was about this sort of, like we've been talking about, the hook and the 7 seconds, and then this more spectrum of engagement. You want to sort of bring people along. I was just curious, have you embedded your experiences in any public programming, or in the future, are you thinking about having some sort of more dedicated programming around it? So there's sort of longer experiences you're going to have people engage in this with, or is it catching them on the floor through the exhibit primarily?
Yeah, last year was the first year that we have done this, and it was wonderful. And so we're doing another this year, and we've actually been given more floor space for it, which is really exciting. And I just think this makes so much sense, and I would love to collaborate with others on it. I mean, that's kind of in the DNA of our program, and it makes sense. It's a heavy lift, and so I tried to emphasize that in the talk too. The partnership level of these and the amount that everybody involved has to personally care about it is pretty high. And so I like to look for those people and find a way to, connect our students across institutions, connect them on a similar project. I think ultimately there could even be like maybe even with NASA, like an annual challenge or something like that students from a lot of different universities, perhaps faculty as well, could be responding to something, just to not have it be every program is doing it on their own. So that may be an indirect answer. We definitely plan to do it again, but we do need some efficiency on the institutional lift side of that. I also think it would be pretty cool so we might work with UCSD this year, and I think it could be cool to have thematic data competitions, because that's fun for students, but that are showcasing how climate is going to affect different ecosystems differently. So something maybe ocean-centered that is in New England and in San Diego and in Rio, and students from these different institutions are working on a similar design brief, but the outcome is different because the locations and their challenges are different. So I guess my answer is just an invitation to look for ways that we could collaborate, because each of those pieces is such a heavy lift.
I fully understand. Thank you, Beth. Great discussion. I think it's time though to move to the last part of this workshop. We are going to have kind of like a summary and an open discussion. So please bring your questions, wishes, invitations there too. Ben, would you like to lead?
Thanks, Eleni, and again, thanks for everyone in the workshop.